going on, boys?
Hey.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, well, today on Gary Williams Stole My Lawn Furniture, welcome to another episode. We got a couple special guests. Mike Wallace was on last week or 2 weeks ago, and then we have former Major League John Hicks. He was nice enough to join us. We're going to get some thoughts about the World Series. We're going to talk a lot of baseball during this. And so, John, welcome to the show. Mike, welcome back. And with no further ado, John, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you do, where you live, and your Major League experience.
So John Hicks from Goochland, Virginia. Went to Goochland High School and then played at University of Virginia for 3 years from 9 to 11. Played in 2 College World Series there. Got drafted by Seattle in the 4th round in 2011. Made it up to the big leagues with them in 15. Then was with Minnesota for a few months. From there to Detroit. Was with Detroit from 16 to 19 in the big leagues for parts of all of those years, for about 2.5 years straight to end my time there. 2020 year was with the D-backs during that nut show of a season. And then Rangers the next year, played in the big leagues with them for a brief time, then Cubs, then Philly in 2023. And then that was the end of the run for me. Finished or got let go around the All-Star break of that season and went back to school, finished my degree. And while I was doing that, I was a student undergraduate assistant for the baseball team at UVA. So I got to go back to Omaha again last year, and now home with wife and 2 boys and getting a real job and doing the whole thing. So
that's awesome. Now, before we even get into any kind of World Series or Major League stuff, how cool was going to Omaha?
Awesome. So I got to play in Rosenblatt in 2009, and then I got to play in the new stadium in 11. So got to play in both, and I think I'm one of 2 people in the world that hit home runs in both stadiums in the College World Series. So that's a cool thing I think I'll have for the rest of my life. So
that's actually pretty impressive, because I remember when they first opened, I think it's still called TD Ameritrade Park.
Yeah.
Like the big knock was that the fences were too freaking deep and there weren't enough home runs. So that's actually a pretty cool stat right there.
So the homer I hit in Rosenblatt, I got jammed and it went out. And the one at the Ameritrade, I couldn't have hit harder, and it went out by like a centimeter. So that place, when it first started, was a freaking joke. And they changed the bats.
Well, you had the BB core bats the second time.
Yeah, so we went from the juice ones to, I'm like, all right, I can get drafted this year. Like, need to hit a bunch of homers, and then they give us those pieces of junk, and it's like you hit the ball twice to get it out.
Awesome, man. But anybody else, Brooks, Dusty, Mike, you guys want to jump in on anything?
I mean, I was gonna say like those bats, they kind of like went so far back in the other direction when they switched to BB core, and then I think after we graduated, all the guys were like, the pop's starting to come back, whether it was from the bats or the balls were getting a little bit more juiced up. I don't know which way they went with it, but yeah, that first year or 2 when BB core came in, that was just like, I mean, it was amazing for me as a pitcher. It made me look real good. So
I bet. Yeah, and being at UVA last year with those guys, I mean, I think at UVA we had probably one of the top averages in the country last season. And I think the biggest thing is the balls. They had seams. I mean, when we all played, the seams were humongous on college balls, and now they're pretty flat, like a big league ball. And they carry very nicely. And the bats have definitely improved a lot since 2011 when they first switched. But I gave those guys a bunch of grief. I'm like, you guys don't even know. I'm like, when we were playing, it was the old man, yells, at a cliff or whatever it is. Like, they were like, save it, man. Like, turn the page.
Yeah.
I remember the ping of those old bats. Jesus. And you'd have guys put them in vices and crack them a little bit to get the fibers going so you get even more pop.
Yeah, so John, when I don't know if you played them or not. My freshman year, I played Division I, and we went down and played, I think it was Maryland, and then it was Maryland and I think George Mason, and there's no way they were not rolling their bats because it sounded like a freaking tennis racket when it came off there, or they were just fucking banging against the
Well, I don't remember playing them and it being a big deal, but we played LSU in 2009 when they won the national championship first game in Omaha, and I mean they had some awesome, really really good players on that team. That a lot of them played in the big leagues, but I mean they were hitting balls out of Rosenblatt, and we were watching their BP like, oh boy, this could be a long day. But I mean I'm watching them, I'm like, those bats there's something different about theirs compared to what I'm swinging.
They sound different too.
Yeah.
But one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, were you there? Were you an assistant or a grad assistant when their closer was there that gave the amazing interview?
No, so that I was just there last year, so 2023. So that guy, he actually, I think he was working for Division I baseball, that whole deal last year, and he's a character. The whole team, a lot of the guys on the team knew him. Some of them had played with him, and but you know what, he turned that interview and some of his crazy antics into a couple jobs, and so it's worked out well for him.
What's this interview?
Oh, I'll have to splice it in. It's one of the funniest freaking. I think you guys were in. I think they were in the super regional. It was before Omaha for sure. It was either regional or super regional, and they came in and gave him this interview to him after the game, asking him about like how much pressure was on him or something like that. And he just went on this tangent like, I'm just a freaking pitcher. I'm not doing anything. He just goes off about, he like puts everything in perspective, but the way he was talking about it was really funny.
And every time he would get the third out of a closing situation, he would turn and launch his glove in the center field, and like every single time. And he looks like Kenny Powers. Like it was.
Yes.
So he was a Savannah banana before there was Savannah bananas.
Absolutely.
Basically, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was he seemed like a space cadet. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it, I think.
Let's turn the page off college, go toward major leagues. What was your favorite ballpark of a team that you played for throughout the duration of your career?
Man, that's a good question. So it's really easy to say the Fenways and the Wrigleys, and there's so much history and tradition and all that, and those are obviously really special. But probably my favorite place to go was Houston. Just something about the ballpark, having the retractable roof, the train in left field, like all the kind of cool designs that go into that location. And then also they were always really good, which makes it even better. You're playing in front of a packed house, and those guys were competing for a World Series every year, and going in there and getting to sneak a win from them, and it was always fun.
All right, now this is a question we asked Tim Meza, who's currently with the Yankees. He's played on a bunch of teams. Favorite food city of a team you played for? What city had the best food?
I mean, I would think it would be hard for anyone to give an answer other than Yankee Stadium. I don't know what he told you, but like you roll in there and they have like 5 chefs in there, like slicing off whatever you want, and like you got a lobster station, a taco station, a steak station. Like it was like a 5-course meal and in the locker room. So
that's awesome. Mike, Dusty, Brooks, jump in whenever you want. You guys want to jump to the World Series and what we're seeing so far?
I was gonna say, let's transition to the World Series. We've seen Freddie Freeman now hit home runs in 5 straight World Series games that he's played in. Talk a little bit about what you've seen from just Freddie Freeman and the Dodgers so far this series.
I mean, we can talk about the World Series. I don't know how much longer we're going to get to talk about it. I think it might be over here pretty quickly. Man, like that's the great thing about baseball. Like when you're a hitter and things are going well for you, it's, you get rolling and it, the ball looks like a beach ball, and, you're just seeing it so well that it doesn't matter who's pitching. Like obviously the teams that are in the World Series and everything's high leverage in these moments. So you're getting their, number one starters, their number one relievers, like they're bringing in high leverage pitchers in all these situations. And for Freddie right now, it doesn't matter, everything that they throw up there, he's seeing well. And I mean, the Dodgers are a wagon, man. Like, that lineup, their rotation. You know, everywhere you turn, it's a lot of money that's been spent, and they've built a roster that's pretty complete.
Yeah, remember like 2 weeks ago, like the end of the last series, I think Freddie Freeman was like, just take me out of lineup, like my swing's fucked up. And then we go into this series and he's just mashing everything that comes across the plate, it feels like.
It can turn very quick. And you know what? It could be the most random thing that made it turn. Like my last couple seasons playing, like with Chicago, I started the first month, I was hitting like 140, and I'm like, dude, I got to do something. I'm telling my wife, like I'm going to get cut any day now. I can't hit anything. And I have a beard at the time, and I'm like, you know what? I'm showing up tomorrow with a Fu Manchu. Shaved my face into a Fu Manchu. The next 2 months, I hit like 330. Ended up hitting 20 homers that year. Like, it was the Fu Manchu. That's all it took.
I mean, I was listening to the broadcast. I actually got time last night to listen to the commentary, which was awesome. By the way, John Smoltz is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically said during the broadcast, and he didn't basically say it, he directly said, do not pitch him inside.
Mm-hmm.
And they threw it inside, and he just took it over. And so if you have, like, I'm sure you have advanced scouting reports from all the advanced scouts that go scout these guys throughout the duration of the regular season, postseason. Would you go out to a pitcher and be like, don't throw that guy inside because we know he's right now seeing a beach ball, like you said? Would you go out to a pitcher and be like, throw it out, throw it away, throw away? First base is not as bad as him trotting around all of the bases.
Yeah. You know what? That pitcher, that whole staff has probably had 10 meetings in the last 3 days talking about every single hitter in that lineup. And when you have your meetings pregame and then in the bullpen, if you're a reliever, like your bullpen coach is going to have a binder and he's going to say, all right, this is who you have coming up. This is how we're going to pitch them. And I would almost guarantee they said, hey, when Freeman gets up, like, we're staying away. And like, for me as a catcher, like, I'm sitting up off the plate. Like, if we're going to miss, if we're going to walk him, whatever, but we're going to make sure we're not going to throw the ball in. And I mean, for the pitchers, like, you guys know how hard it is to, like, all right, I can't throw this ball in. And then, like, suddenly, oh crap, there it goes in, you know, like, it's just like as a hitter, all right, I can't strike out. I got to put the ball in play. You're thinking about striking out, you're going to strike out. But, I mean, they've heard it probably 1,000 times. And like going out as a catcher, like there are situations like, all right, we're going to go out. Hey, we're going to pitch around him. We're going to pitch everything away. And like, all right, we're going to set up off the plate. If we miss off and he doesn't swing, whatever, if he does, like, perfect. That's great for us. But, you know, with the whole, you get 5 visits or whatever it is, and, you know, you have to use them at the right time. And, you know, it just all depends on that situation and how much you trust that pitcher. If I go out there and tell him this, is he going to execute that? Or am I going to dome him up by telling him, hey, we can't throw the ball in this certain spot?
Did you have a better relationship with certain pitchers, or were you kind of universal?
100%. I mean, you definitely have guys that you have better relationships, especially off the field. Like when we're on the field, we're all on the same side. We're pushing in the same direction. And those guys know that I put in the work, that I'm going to give them information that is factual information that I've studied, and that's in that, you know, the binder that we get based on every hitter. And as long as you have that trust with each guy and they know that you're putting in your work and they're putting in theirs, and, you know, everybody's going to understand where you're coming from. But there's obviously certain guys that, you know, not everybody on the team am I going to go out and have a beer with after the game, but some of those guys I'm tighter with, especially away from the yard.
Yeah, and us being a Baltimore team, it looks like one of your first seasons here in Detroit, you were playing with James McCann, and we always talked about how comfortable it seemed James McCann and why am I blanking on our ace Corbin Burns were all the whole time. And I mean, it seemed like their relationship was like, just going back to what you were saying, like, it was just kind of seamless. They kind of knew they were on the same page. So I kind of wanted to see what it was like. I'm sure you learned a ton from James there in Detroit and kind of how he was as a person, because as Baltimore fans, we just think he's a fucking badass after taking one off the face and not even coming out of the game.
Yeah, that was badass for sure. And that's Matt James. Like he's a tough, hard-nosed kid. Like he's gonna give you everything he's got, and he was a great guy to play with. Like really fun guy to be around. I was fortunate, man. Like there was never a team that I was the number one, like, hey, I was going to catch every day. Like, I was either the backup catcher, played a lot of first base. And so I had a lot of guys, man, that were really influential for me. Like with Seattle, when I first debuted, my first season was rough, like really rough. Like 2 for 32 with like 16 punch outs rough. And but Kyle Seager was like a huge mentor to me, that he helped me along the whole way. He talked me off a ledge a lot of times. And honestly, if it wasn't for him, I probably would have never made it back to the big leagues after that season. And then I get to Detroit and I have guys like McCann, who's the starting catcher, and, you know, helped me out with a lot of things. And obviously there were quite a few Hall of Famers on that team when I first got to Detroit. With, you know, Miggy is awesome. Miggy's a 12-year-old and a 40-year-old body, like super happy-go-lucky, has fun all the time. And you could ask him anything and, you know, he'd be there for you. Now, there are certain things with Miggy, like the game came almost too easy for him. You'd ask him about, like, hey, what are you looking for in that situation? He was like, well, I was looking for a slider, but he threw me a fastball, so I just hit it. And then we're like, what? Like, how'd you do that? You know? But, you know, and then obviously Victor, Justin Verlander, guys like that still are, and were, you know, really, really good players. And, you know, I was fortunate to have a lot of great teammates that made my time in the big leagues and in pro ball a lot of fun.
Did you prefer to catch righties or lefties? And then Mike, after that, go ahead, man.
I would say I preferred to catch righties, but, you know, either way, I didn't really care who I caught. If I was in the lineup, I was pumped about it. And, you know, it didn't really matter to me, but probably some of the most success I had in Detroit, obviously catching Verlander's easy. Like, he was going to do what he wanted to do. And, you know, it was made your job pretty easy as a catcher. But Matt Boyd, who had kind of like a resurrection year this year with Cleveland, like in Detroit, him and I had an awesome relationship. His numbers when I was catching him, one year, I think he finished 5th in the league in strikeouts. And our numbers together were really, really good. I think he averaged like 14 strikeouts per 9 in the outings that I caught him. And it was like, he was a lefty that like wasn't going to overpower people, but he understood how to pitch. And he, like, if I called a pitch into a righty, he was going to hit it. And then he had a slider that pitched so well off of his fastball into righties that, like, it was a super fun, you know, back and forth with us when we were working together. So it didn't matter lefty or righty, you know, for the most part. I would say a slight, you know, favor to righties, but either way.
Okay. Mike, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch in on the Verlander aspect. Obviously, I don't know if these guys know, but you've known Justin probably your whole life. I would imagine now at this point, family, friends, your brother and him have that funny contract on the napkin for a signing bonus and a milk. Can you elaborate a little bit on how, I mean, I know you said it made it easy. He made it easy for catchers, but I mean, how was the connection with that, knowing someone your whole life and then getting a chance to finally be up there in the bigs?
Yeah. So for you guys that don't know, Justin and my oldest brother, Daniel, were the same age in high school, went to high school together, became best friends. Still to this day, like every year, Justin has my brother come out, they hang out for a few weeks and golf and go to games and whatnot. And I think Justin's coming back to Goochland this week and my brother will be playing golf with him for the next few days. But I remember starting to watch Justin dominate when I was like 10 years old, and, you know, you realize something was different about him. And then, you know, just so happens I end up in Detroit, and I remember first time I caught him was in Kansas City, and I kind of called my parents and I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm catching, you know, in 2 days, Justin's pitching in Kansas City. Like, I know that's something that you guys would love to come out and see. So my dad ended up flying out and watched the game. And you know, I still have a picture in my house that my dad took of like Justin and I in the outfield warming up together, and just a super cool moment that you know, I'll remember forever. And then I was lucky enough to face Justin a couple times, and I have 2 home runs off of him, which is kind of hilarious. But he's awesome, and like we had a great relationship, and he looked out for me in Detroit when I first got there. And yeah, like you said, he is a future Hall of Famer, probably a first ballot Hall of Famer that, this year probably is a year that he wants back, and I expect we're going to get a couple more years of him before he finally hangs him up. And but he's a great guy and obviously super talented.
Yeah, and going back to did you? I assume you guys cross paths in the ACC too with Kyle Seager, just because I remember him playing third when we were playing them in the regionals one year. So I mean, did you guys get to know each other before you guys kind of got together in Seattle? I think he's maybe a year or two older than us.
Yeah, so he was a junior when I was a freshman. He was at Carolina, and we went there and played them, and they had Ackley and Seager.
Yeah.
Two guys, like, man, they were, first team all ACC, all Americans, and the whole deal. But he kind of got overshadowed by Ackley. I think Ackley went second and Sieg went third or fourth round. So we knew of each other from playing against each other one weekend in college. And then when I got drafted, my second spring training, I was in big league camp and got to know him a lot there. And then every year we go to spring training, and he was super friendly and looked out for all the young guys and kind of, put us under his wing. And then as soon as I got called up, being from, the Southeast and playing in the ACC, we had a lot in common. And it just, it kind of right away, as soon as I got up there, he was like, hey, if you need anything, let me know. And I mean, a lot of the guys, he had already signed his $100 million deal and all that. And usually if you have a veteran on the team that is as good of a guy as Kyle, like they look out for the guys when they first come up, and whether it's, hey, I'll take you to dinner, if something, you're struggling with something, let me know. And he kind of did all that for me and a few of the other guys that came up. And I can't speak enough about how awesome he was and how much he meant to me. So
good deal. Who was your favorite manager?
Okay.
I don't know if we can put that out there.
Oh, no, we can do this. We can splice this one out. How about this? Who was your quirkiest manager?
Well, all right. So let's see. I'll give you all my
favorite. Quirkiest manager.
I'll give you all the managers I had so in the big leagues. I had Lloyd McClendon in Seattle. Then when I got to Detroit, Brad Ausmus. Then Ron Gardenhire. And those guys were all I didn't have an issue with any of them. But honestly, and I think I don't think anybody will frown upon this, but my favorite manager, the guy that honestly meant a ton to me in pro ball, was Pedro Grifol, who former White Sox manager, just got fired. He was my manager in high A, and he went to Florida State, never made it to the big leagues as a player, but then worked his way through coaching, and then made it.
Dusty, go on mute.
Sox. Am I on mute?
No, not you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. But Pedro was awesome to me. Obviously, it didn't work out great for him in Chicago, and that whole deal. And hopefully he bounces back and finds another spot. But I thought he was great. I mean, Gardy was awesome. He's a really funny guy. He'd been in baseball for 50 years, and he had a lot of the guys that were with him in Minnesota when he brought them over to Detroit. And then the other manager I had was Chris Woodward in Texas. Woody was the first base coach for McClendon in Seattle when I debuted. And so I got my first at bat, I got called up, was in Chicago against the White Sox off Quintana. I got a hit to right my first at bat. And I remember getting the first, and Woody leans over and he's like, hey man, you started your career better than anyone else ever has. And I'm like, it's all downhill from here. And it sure was.
The wording of the question was because when you say favorite, it sounds like you're, demeaning the other managers. But I guess the wording of the question should have been, who was the manager that meant the most to you? And so you obviously answered that already.
Yeah.
Now, How good did that feeling? Were you numb running down first base when you get your first career hit?
I definitely was. I had my mom, dad, my brothers, their wives, and in the stands, and it's on it. So it's kind of a funny story. So I get called up, like I said, we're in Chicago. So the first game I don't play. McClendon's like, "Hey, sit with me. I want to just kind of talk the game with you." And then the next day, I don't think I wasn't in the lineup the second day either. But halfway through the game, he's like, "Hey, go down to the bullpen and warm up a few pitchers just to kind of be ready." Well, our shortstop was Kettle Marte, and he hits a ball, runs to first base, and kind of pulls up. I think he pulled his hammy or something. Well, our backup shortstop was Brad Miller, who was playing center field, and he had gotten pinch hit for early in the game. So we didn't have another extra infielder to come in. So the bullpen coach was like, "Hey, get loose. You might have to go in to catch, and the catcher will go play third." And I'm like, "Okay, awesome." Like, I'm pumped up. It's like, I think it's the 7th inning. We're up by like 5 runs. Well, the phone rings, and they call down, and they're like, "Hey, get Hicks loose. He's going into third base." And I haven't played third base since my junior year of high school. So I start stretching. I come in the game at third base, and I'm like nervous as crap. It's raining. It's windy. So didn't get any ground balls, but they have like Jose Abreu, Alexi Ramirez, guys that like are big snap hook right-handed hitters, and I'm like, these guys are going to hit one down my throat. Well, I end up getting one fly ball that, like, this ball's in the air, it feels like, for 20 seconds. Like, I'm like, feel like I'm doing circles around there. Well, Seager had moved from third to short, and I looked at him. I'm like, "Hey, man, help me out with anything." So this ball goes up, and I'm looking up, and I'm like peeking over at him, like he's going to take it, right? Nothing. Finally, I'm like, "Screw it, I got it." I end up catching it. I look over at Seager, and he is like falling on the ground laughing at me. And so that was my my official debut. Well, I didn't get an at bat that day, and then the next day I got the hit off Quintana, and yeah, obviously a surreal feeling. Like, you dream about that as a kid, your first at bat, getting a hit, and so that it worked out, and yeah, it was a very fun, awesome experience with my family there. So
awesome. That's wild that your first appearance in the major leagues was not in a true position that you actually played.
Yeah. At that point, you're just sitting there like, all right, I guess I'm just going to chest up anything over here, and hopefully it doesn't go through my sternum.
No doubt. And then I get to Detroit, and I played a lot of first at UVA, but I hadn't played first in pro ball really at all. Well, I get called up with Detroit, and I think Miggy had gotten hurt, and they were like, "All right, you're going to come in." I'd been in AAA, been catching, been hitting really well, playing really well. And they call me up. I'm like, that's kind of weird. I get there, and they're like, "Hey, we know you played first in college. If Miggy can't play today, we're going to put him on the DL, and you're starting. Oh, by the way, the game is at 11:30, and it's 10:30. So, yeah. So they're like, run outside with the infield coach, take some ground balls, and just get comfortable. I go take ground balls. As soon as I walk back in, they're like, "Hey, Miggy's going on the DL. You're at first today." I'm like, "All right, same thing. Like, I'm gonna chest up whatever comes at me.
Yeah.
Flip it to the pitcher."
And the ball normally finds you, right? And that's what they always say.
Sure does.
Normally finds you.
Yep.
And you had a crash course in the major leagues. Holy
I
smoke.
really did. I drafted as a catcher and came up through the minors as a catcher, and I think I have just about the same amount of appearances at first base as I do at catching in the big leagues, and over 3. I think I have 3 years and 30 some days in the big leagues, and it's split half and half between catching and first, so kind of crazy.
Awesome. Well, I know you guys got a meeting coming up, and you guys got to get back to regular work. Mike, you want to add anything, man? And by the way, John, thank you so much. Mike, thank you so much for hooking us up with John. He's going to ask some questions that are a little bit more off the cuff than what we normally talk about. Like, you can only talk about the Ravens offensive line on the left side so much. So we like to have this experience, and we're all baseball junkies. So, but Mike, you want to add anything, man?
Yeah, just like a little funny story. So I know Jazz, I still have my towel with the bomb squad, if you remember that.
Yeah.
So after my freshman year, Macon, Kyle and I didn't really have anywhere to go play in the summer, so we went and played in Goochland League. So it was Goochland High School baseball and one Powhatan kid, which is a county over, against 35 schools in any Florida area, South Carolina area, whatever. I do remember Jazz, he had to travel a lot and play, so he would only play with us probably half the games. And I thought I was having a season hitting like 15, 16 home runs. He comes in playing half the games, hits 30. So we get these towels made, having bomb squad. I mean, we're reckless. Country kids wearing eye black, getting told we were beating kids so bad that we couldn't wear it anymore. Umpires were making up rules to get us into trouble, kick us out of the game. But that was one of the best summers of baseball. And like I said, just to see him play, he always played up with us. So it wasn't anything new to me to see what he did every day and how far he went. But it was just one of the best summers of baseball I ever had.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And where does the nickname come from? Jazz.
Okay. So Jazz came from my dad. When I was a kid, whenever music would come on, I would start dancing. It started at like 3 years old. And so he just started calling me Jazz. And literally like in high school, half my teachers called me Jazz. At UVA, half all the coaches called me Jazz. And it's a name that stuck with me forever. We had the player weekend jerseys when I was up with Detroit, and that was the nickname that was on the back for me. And kind of building off of that summer, like Mike was talking about. So Kyle, who, you know, a couple of y'all play with, my middle brother, Kyle is reckless for sure, as Mike was saying. And he, so he was a pitcher and I became a catcher because of that. So he was 2 years older. And so I have a lot to thank him and my other brother, Daniel, for. Like, those guys kind of helped me become the player I became. And Kyle loved hitting people. Like, that was his favorite thing of being a pitcher. He just wanted to hit people. And like that summer, I remember going out there talking to him on the mound, and I'm like, hey man, like, just get this guy out. We're going to win the game. Like, don't hit him. He'd already hit the kid like 3 times in the game. And like, I go out to him and he's like, no, I'm going to hit him and I'll get the next guy out and we'll win the game. And like, that's what he did. Like, he just loved hitting guys. And like, he just has the mannerism and the aura that, like, if somebody looks at him the wrong way, then he felt like he needed to hit them with a baseball.
Oh yeah,
that was South Carolina. The leadoff hitter was South Carolina. He drilled 4 times because the kid talked crap to him after a game.
And like, that's old school baseball at its finest there. So
yeah. Also, where the hell is Goochland, Virginia?
It's right between Richmond and Charlottesville. So kind of stuck in the middle between the two cities is the boonies of Goochland.
Brooks, you go order a shot in Goochland, it's a bucket. Well, all right, guys, thank you so much. I know you guys got your day jobs you got to get back to, so but thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate the stories, the good times. Mike, thank you so much. I'll be in touch with you, buddy. Thanks for reaching out the last couple of days.
Thanks, Jazz.
John.
Yeah, man.
Awesome,
Thanks
man.
for having me.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.
Have a good day. Thank you,
Cheers.
boys.
You guys have a good one. Thank you.
See you.